In our headlines on this Thursday, April 10th, here in South Korea. The Trump administration postpones for 90 days the heavier country-specific tariffs on all its trade partners, with the exception of China, whose tariff has been raised by 125%. And news of the postponement of reciprocal tariffs restores investor confidence on Wall Street, fueling a sharp rebound that is also witnessed here in South Korea as the local bourse reacts favorably to the pause in U.S. import duties. Meanwhile, the ruling People Power Party discloses details of its partisan primary election procedure, which will include 3 stages, while the opposition Democratic Party's Lee Jae-myung announces his intentions to run for the presidential race in a video clip. We start with news of a 3-month pause in reciprocal tariffs by the Trump administration on American trade partners who chose negotiation over retaliation. Kim Bo-kyung has our top story.
In just 13 hours since the reciprocal tariffs for so-called worst offender countries took effect on Wednesday, U.S. President Donald Trump abruptly backed down on this set of tariffs for 90 days for all countries apart from China, which instead saw its tariffs raised to 125%. Trump's stunning reversal came through his social media just before 1:30 p.m. Wednesday, where he said Washington would pause higher targeted tariffs to more than 75 trading partners who reached out to negotiate with the U.S. rather than retaliated. He repeated his thoughts during an event with race car champions on the White House South Lawn.
I did a 90-day pause for the people that didn't retaliate, because I told them if you retaliate, we're going to double it. And that's what I did with China, because they did retaliate.
The decision means countries that would have faced reciprocal tariff rates on Wednesday, including South Korea, see rates go back down to the universal 10% rate. But for Beijing, which had retaliated to Trump's 104% tariffs by upping its tariff rate on U.S. goods to 84%, Trump raised tariffs on China yet again to now 125%. Products that aren't exempt under the trade deal, steel, aluminum, and autos, will still have a 25% tariff. When asked whether volatile bond markets persuaded him to pull back on his plan, Trump said he saw people were getting afraid.
The bond market right now is beautiful. But yeah, I saw last night where people were getting a little queasy. They were getting yippy, you know? They were getting a little bit yippy, a little bit afraid.
On this, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent reportedly told the press at the White House that what people saw, the reciprocal tariffs that went in effect on Wednesday, was a ceiling, and now that they have a temporary floor. He added it would take some time for each country's tailor-made solutions. Meanwhile, for South Korea, the 90-day pause will likely serve as time to negotiate with the U.S. after the new administration launches in June. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
And as mentioned ahead, among the U.S. trade partners that are opting for retaliation over negotiation is China, whose tit-for-tat strategy also includes tough rhetoric. Our Lee Jae-myung covers Beijing's earlier response and more.
The 2 largest economies in the world are now going back and forth with tariffs, each hoping one side will succumb first. A day after U.S. President Donald Trump announced a 104% tariff on Chinese goods coming into the U.S., China retaliated, announcing an 84% tariff on U.S. goods. China's State Council Tariff Commission said in a statement that the U.S. escalation of tariffs against Beijing is a mistake upon mistake, adding that it severely infringes upon China's legitimate rights and interests. It added that the U.S. tariffs seriously damaged the rules-based multilateral trading system. China had warned that it would fight to the end if Washington continued to impose additional tariffs against the country. On top of the 84% tariffs, China's Ministry of Commerce announced that it had imposed export controls on 12 American companies, banning Chinese companies from supplying them with dual-use products with military and civilian applications. Beijing also added 6 more U.S. firms to its unreliable entity list, which bans them from trading or making new investments in China. Meanwhile, the European Union will impose its first countermeasures against the U.S. reciprocal tariffs starting next week. EU members agreed on Wednesday to join Canada and China in retaliating against U.S. tariff policies. Members agreed to impose retaliatory tariffs on $23 billion worth of American products, from farm produce to products from Republican states. The EU says it will impose 25% tariffs on a number of goods, from almonds to yachts, with the first levies being collected starting next Tuesday. Most of the retaliatory tariffs will be applied from May 15th, and the remainder starting on December 1st. However, the European Commission said in a statement that these countermeasures can be suspended at any time should the U.S. agree to a fair and balanced negotiated outcome. Lee Jae-myung, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, as expected, Wall Street rallied following news of a 90-day pause in U.S. tariffs on its trade partners. The Dow Jones Industrial Average on Wednesday surged 7.8% to close at 40,608.4. The tech-heavy Nasdaq soared over 12% to end its session at 17,124.9. Global crude prices also rose. On the New York Mercantile Exchange, futures for May delivery for West Texas Intermediate gained over 4%, while the June delivery for Brent crude also jumped over 4% on the ICE Futures Exchange. The country-specific U.S. tariffs are on hold for now, but the baseline 10% tariff on all foreign origin goods, as well as the 25% tariff on cars and steel imports into the American market, remain in place. So what have been the ripple effects of these tariffs on South Korea thus far? Our correspondent Lee Soo-jin takes a look.
관세 대응 119 해외 진출 상담 센터입니다. 미국의 대중국 상호 관세 물으시는 거네요. 예.
This is just one of over 100 tariff-related inquiries the Korea Trade Investment Promotion Agency now receives daily, a sharp jump from just 20 before U.S. President Donald Trump's tariffs. But while the 90-day pause on reciprocal tariffs offers Korea temporary relief, existing duties remain a challenge. The 10% baseline tariff that went into effect on April 5th remains in place, and the 25% duties on items like automobiles and steel are not covered by the 90-day grace period. And starting May 3rd, a 25% tariff on auto parts will also go into effect.
Auto parts suppliers are facing significant disruption. Some subparts required for manufacturing are still being imported from Korea. So even if vehicle assembly happens locally, the impact of increased tariffs on imported car parts is still unavoidable.
But as of now, markets are seeing a recovery. A buy-side sidecar was triggered Thursday morning for the first time in over 8 months as the Kospi 200 futures jumped more than 5% from the previous session, just days after a sell-side sidecar was activated on Monday, also for the first time in 8 months. A buy-side sidecar was also activated for the Kosdaq during morning trade for the first time since August last year, when the futures and the stock index each rose more than the 6% and 3% thresholds. The market rebound extended through the day, with the Kospi and the Kosdaq indexes both closing up at around 6%. And the 90-day pause provides Korea a chance to strengthen its trade strategy.
With the United States, not only trade and tariff, but also shipbuilding, LNG investment in Alaska gas pipe, and defense cost sharing are expected to be discussed comprehensively.
As one of the Trump administration's key energy priorities is fossil fuels, it has repeatedly urged Korea to join the Alaska LNG project. In response, South Korea's foreign ministry issued a research tender on Thursday to explore ways to expand U.S. oil and LNG imports. Shipbuilding, where Korea is a global leader, is also emerging as a key area of cooperation, following Trump's executive order to rebuild the U.S. shipping industry, citing national security and competition with China. Lee Soo-jin, Arirang News.
Acting President Han Duck-soo has called for a closely coordinated approach to addressing U.S. tariffs on South Korea, with all agencies, including the country's embassy in the U.S., reaching out to relevant American authorities for talks. Our correspondent Moon Hae-ryan has the latest.
Acting President and Prime Minister Han Duck-soo has ordered an all-out diplomatic push to respond to Washington's tariff moves, following the Trump administration's decision to temporarily suspend additional rates on reciprocal tariffs for key trade partners, including South Korea. During a virtual meeting on Wednesday with South Korea's ambassador to the United States, Cho Yeon-dong, and Minister for Trade, Chung In-kyo, Han stressed the need for swift and unified coordination with U.S. counterparts, the National Security Council, U.S. Trade Representative, and the U.S. Departments of State, Commerce, and Energy. He instructed the Korean embassy in Washington to strengthen communication with U.S. officials and ensure timely reporting back to Seoul, where all government ministries are treating the situation with the utmost seriousness. Ambassador Cho said U.S. officials reacted positively following Han's phone call with U.S. President Trump, expressing interest in deepening cooperation in trade, energy, and shipbuilding. Trade Minister Chung, who is currently in Washington, echoed that the tariff delay gives Korea a chance to minimize the economic fallout. However, he warned of potential spillover effects from steep U.S. tariffs on China, such as an influx of discounted Chinese goods into Korean and regional markets. Meanwhile, Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister Choi Sang-mok also addressed the issue, stating on Wednesday that the 90-day deferral has eased some immediate pressure. In a meeting with financial envoys abroad, he pledged full support for Korean companies during this adjustment period and emphasized the need for clear messaging that Korea's economic and foreign policy remains steady despite this period of political transition. Officials noted that while China is responding forcefully to the U.S. tariffs, countries like Japan and Vietnam are prioritizing dialogue, highlighting the importance of tailored, proactive diplomacy in the weeks ahead. Moon Hae-ryun, Arirang News.
In other news, Seoul and Washington reportedly signed a fresh wartime operations plan last year. According to General Xavier Brunson, the commander of U.S. Forces Korea, in a written statement to the U.S. House Committee on Armed Services on Wednesday. He added the new plan was sealed in response to Pyongyang's increasingly sophisticated weapons of mass destruction and missile capabilities. Moreover, with regard to the stationing of American soldiers on the Korean peninsula, Brunson highlighted the positional advantage of this troop presence. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy says at least 155 Chinese nationals, as identified by Kyiv's intelligence, are fighting alongside Russia against Ukraine. Addressing members of the media on Wednesday, he added that Beijing is aware Moscow is recruiting Chinese mercenaries through social media platforms. Also earlier on Tuesday, the Ukrainian leader revealed that 2 Chinese men had been captured during combat on Ukrainian soil. China's foreign ministry in response has said Beijing is looking into the situation but rejected as groundless reports of broader Chinese involvement in Russia's military campaign. On the political frontier, the ruling People Power Party has disclosed its partisan primary election plan, which looks to include both open and closed votes. Our correspondent Kim Do-yeon has details.
The rules for the People Power Party's presidential primary are set. With over 10 contenders expected to vie for the nomination, there will be a series of cutoffs. But their biggest challenge, winning public support amid the fallout from President Yoon Suk-yeol's impeachment. That's why the first round of cutoffs to leave 4 contenders will be an open survey to all citizens, not just their registered members.
The decision to base the first round entirely on the general public was made in response to widespread calls for an open primary and greater weight on public sentiment. This ensures that candidates who align with the public's expectations can advance to the 4-way race.
As for the specific timeline, the first round of candidates will be finalized by April 16th. After 3 days of debates, the general public poll will leave 4 contenders. For the next few days, the 4 candidates will face the media and debate each other. The next cutoff survey starts on the 27th, and by the 29th, the remaining 2 will be decided through an open poll for 50% and eligible PPP electors for 50%. Or registered PPP members who've paid for party membership at least once in the past year. If one of the 4 contenders receives more than 50% of the final votes here, he or she will be the final candidate. If not, on April 30th, a debate will be held between the 2 contenders. On May 3rd, the PPP will hold a convention and announce its candidate. Meanwhile, to prevent tactical voting in open polls where opposition supporters might boost a weaker PPP candidate, those who previously backed another are excluded from the survey sample. As for the race, the latest to enter is former PPP chair Han Dong-hoon. Speaking at the National Assembly, Han vowed to block what he called Lee Jae-myung's monstrous administration and says he wants a generational shift in politics.
I'm going to create a nation where the citizens come first, the middle class grows, and practicality beats ideology. With that in mind, I will make a change in politics, the era, and the generation.
Once the closest to President Yoon, Han broke ranks in early 2024 and even backed Yoon's impeachment. Because of this, he is expected to score high on the all-open voting tallies. Daegu Mayor Hong Jun-pyo is also likely a beneficiary, and his declaration is set to come next Monday. On the other hand, Yoon's close political ally Na Kyung-won also announced that she will declare her candidacy on Friday. Kim Moon-soo and An Chol-soo are among those that's declared candidacy already. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
And former Democratic Party leader Lee Jae-myung, who stepped down on Wednesday, has announced another run for the nation's top office. In a video message on this Thursday morning, he pledged dedication to people in a new vision dubbed K Initiative that highlights Korea's ability to turn crisis into opportunity. He is expected to elaborate on this vision at the parliament on Friday. Other DP candidates are former lawmaker Kim Do-kwan and Governor of Gyeonggi-do Province Kim Dong-yeon, who earlier declared their intentions to run in the race. Meanwhile, the opposition party has tapped Park Bom-gye, a four-term lawmaker, as its election committee chair and has yet to announce its partisan primary election plan. The Constitutional Court has dismissed the National Assembly's motion to impeach Justice Minister Park Sung-jae. The court on Thursday unanimously declared its decision not to uphold the dismissal of Park on allegations of collusion to impose martial law, citing the lack of tangible evidence. This ruling immediately reinstated Park into his post after almost 4 months of absence. On the cultural front, an art museum here in capital Seoul is showcasing a beautiful collection of ancient paper fans that all have a unique story to share. Our Han Da-eun has a glimpse.
A fan painting gifted by a Qing dynasty scholar to a celebrated Chosun literati painter Hong Yeon-ju. The delicate bamboo leaves invite viewers into the refined artistic exchanges of the era. Jiran Byung-bun by Chusa Kim Jung-hee, a towering figure of Chosun-era calligraphy and literati art, brings to life a graceful composition of orchid blossoms and mushrooms. Cho Hee-ryung's orchids whisper of changing times, casting light on the evolution of his artistic style.
Cho Hee-ryung's early orchid paintings were largely shaped by Chusa Kim Jung-hee, but later gave way to a more unrestrained style, reflecting the emotional weight of his exile.
A grand fan painting by Tanwon Kim Hong-do, Chosun's prominent painter renowned for his depictions of common people, with heartfelt praise from Kim's close mentor inscribed in the right corner, adds to the charm and warmth of this masterful work.
Rather than giving a plain fan, our ancestors made it special by adding their own paintings or calligraphy, turning it into a personalized gift.
The fan artworks of modern-era artists are filled with calligraphy and paintings, each brimming with stories and warm wishes for the recipient's good fortune. Titled Sonu Pungol, which translates to sharing a moonlit breeze with good friends, the exhibition features 55 fan artworks carefully curated from the Kansong Art Museum's collection. Among them, over 20 pieces will be unveiled to the public for the first time. The museum's first fan-themed exhibition in 50 years runs through May 25th, inviting visitors to discover the untold stories woven through every fold and brushstroke. Han Da-eun, Arirang News.
This is The World Now, bringing you the latest stories from around the globe. In Germany, Friedrich Merz is set to become the next chancellor next month, with the conservative CDU-CSU alliance and the center-left SPD reaching a coalition agreement. On Wednesday local time, leaders from Germany's Christian Democratic Union, its sister party, the Christian Social Union, and the Social Democratic Party announced a coalition deal. This follows the federal elections held on February 23rd, where the CDU and CSU emerged as the leading force without an outright majority. The coalition policy framework, titled Responsibility for Germany, outlines key initiatives including economic measures, fiscal policy, defense, and foreign policy. Friedrich Merz, leader of the CDU, is poised to become the next chancellor, pending formal approval processes within the involved parties. U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has announced plans to enhance military cooperation with Panama, aiming to counter perceived threats from China's influence over the Panama Canal. During a visit to Panama City on Tuesday, Hegseth emphasized the strategic importance of the Panama Canal, through which over 40% of U.S. container traffic transits annually. On Wednesday, he asserted that China-based companies control critical infrastructure in the canal area, potentially enabling surveillance activities that compromise the security and sovereignty of both Panama and the United States. In response, the U.S. and Panama have agreed to deepen their military collaboration, including conducting joint training exercises and enhancing security operations to safeguard the canal's operations. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte visited Tokyo on Wednesday to meet with Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba. The two leaders agreed to enhance defense industry cooperation, focusing on developing advanced dual-use technologies, such as artificial intelligence and drones. They also plan to increase collaboration in cyber defense, space, and joint military exercises. Both parties expressed concern over China's military buildup and its support for Russia's defense industry amid the ongoing Ukraine conflict. Japan also expressed interest in joining NATO's security assistance and training for Ukraine mission, which is based in Germany. Finally, U.S. toymaker Mattel has unveiled a new Ken doll modeled on NBA superstar LeBron James. It is the first time a professional male athlete has been honored in this way. Dubbed the Ken-bassador, the doll reflects James' influence both on and off the court. It features a blue and white jacket, including his jersey number 23, and an Ohio emblem. Accessories include Nike sneakers, Beats headphones, and the LeBron James Family Foundation's We Are Family t-shirt. The doll will be available from April 14th to 19th at select retailers and online platforms, priced at $75 US. 최지희, Arirang News.
It was lovely to see the beautiful sunshine making a comeback today, and it felt just like the proper springtime weather out there. And tomorrow we can look forward to an even nicer afternoon. Then we are expecting a dynamic weather shift over the weekend with a spring storm expected with a big chill on Sunday. Meanwhile, Seoul and the surrounding regions will remain dusty all day. The Chungcheongdo provinces could get dusty at times. Now, tomorrow morning, it starts off similar to today at 8 degrees in the capital, Gwangju and Daegu. Busan will be tad milder at 11 degrees. But afternoon highs will rise rapidly, feeling more like early summer, hovering 25 degrees Celsius in many parts of Korea under mostly sunny skies nationwide. Then weekend rain looks like it could be quite significant for a spring shower. So if you're hoping to catch the peak cherry blossom, tomorrow would definitely be the time to do it. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
Right, those are the headlines at this hour. Thank you for watching.